Nick Kunze, and I'm an account manager at the London Stock Exchange Group, and today we are having conversations with our clients. Nick, please introduce yourself and your role in the market.
Yeah, hi Magani. My name is Nick Kunze. I'm a senior portfolio manager at Sanlam Private Wealth here in Johannesburg.
Great stuff. Jumping into it, Nick, do you anticipate a good year for investors this year? Positive economic growth?
So I think it will probably finish the year higher than where we started it, although it's going to be extremely volatile. I think it's going to be one of those very narrow focused stock pickers market this year. And if the last 3 months are anything to go by, it's the fun has only just started.
It's very interesting. So just looking back at the previous year, which asset class for you surprised you the most?
Well, certainly coming out of COVID at the start of the year, the economies were opening up. It was a bright new world. The lockdown stocks were out of favor, as we remember. I think the one that certainly caught me and certainly some of my colleagues off guard was the flight to dirty, old-fashioned fossil fuels, coal, energy, oil. Didn't anticipate how the market was going to gravitate towards those as the economies opened up.
It's very interesting. So resources for you and commodities was the biggest surprise for you.
Commodities. I understood that. I got that as there were supply chain disruptions. The economies were opening up. I understood the simple, stupid supply-demand factors of the commodity side. What I didn't get was the energy side. And then specifically things like coal, that caught us a lot off guard, especially given the ESG, given the real push in towards the clean energy sector. That particular sector, which was up in some parts 100, 200% in 2022, I think that's the one we missed. That's the one we didn't quite get.
Taking that into consideration, then, are there any big mistakes or lessons that probably came out of that whole experience?
I think the lessons for me were there was very much from an investor's point of view, not my asset management point of view, but from an investing point of view, you've got to be quite specific. I think where you want to hang your hat. You can't have both worlds. So if you want to, for example, ESG, if you want to invest in a cleaner world, you're going to probably have to sacrifice a little bit of performance in some sectors, and that's what we saw last year. So that was a bit of a lesson for us, in that you can't have it both worlds. So you got to be careful which horse you back.
ESG is always a very interesting one and a challenge for most guys, right? And now it's becoming more and more sort of topical and a focus issue. But do you feel that sometimes ESG prevents you from taking advantage of maximum returns in the market?
I think the jury's probably out. I don't think we've been long enough in ESG to figure out if there's any sort of, non-benefits for being in it. My personal view, and I think some of the studies have shown that over long term, you might have to sacrifice a little bit of short-term performance for longer term goal, and we've seen it here in South Africa. There's a lot of companies on the JSE which are quite, dirty when it comes to polluting. Sasol, case in point, that certainly won't tickle the ESG boxes, and you might have to sacrifice a little bit of performance. But long term, I think ESG is the way things are going to be going forward.
I do agree, especially if you want to have a sustainable world where we are still around. And just sort of now going into your role as a portfolio manager, right? Are there any challenges within your role that are keeping you up at night?
Sure. I think certainly from a personal point of view, a South African point of view, and I think all of us in South Africa, we've had a huge problem with regards to immigration. We live in a country where what keeps me awake at night, 35%, 36% official unemployment, is probably far worse if you dig down the subcategories. And what we're getting is a lot of talented young professionals who would like to stay in South Africa are leaving. And if I want to be extremely selfish, a lot of those young professionals who are exactly my target market of, I want to manage their wealth, I want to see them stay, I want to see them benefit to grow our fiscal base here, are leaving. So that is the number one thing that keeps me awake at night, is the migration of highly skilled labor in South Africa.
For me, that's very interesting. And just for, a selfish question of mine, right? Are you seeing any interesting trends amongst the new age investors versus old age investors who've been investing for generations, right? Are there any sort of differences, particularly around investment philosophies and also just, specific preferences?
So there's two very, very distinct differences. The first being the new age, younger, I guess the younger generation, obviously far more tech savvy, far more real time. They require far greater impetus on shorter term gains, and that also might be just the environment they operate in. So TikTok, real time, social media, they're used to instant gratifications and they want instant results. So they're far more tech savvy. Also, the younger, I guess, investment generation are far more susceptible to alternatives. Cryptocurrencies are far more appealing, they understand them. They seem to operate in a world where a paperless society seems more evident. On the older school generation, that's sort of my generation, much more traditional. Traditional asset classes, shares, bonds, real estate. Real estate make up quite a large portion of the older school generation wealth and asset classes. And in fact, it's quite interesting that a lot of the younger client base of mine, some of them don't even own a home. They rent their houses. Whereas the older generation, that is just never going to happen. You buy your primary property, you don't pay someone else's bond. So there's definitely distinct differences. But the ultimate long-term goal is they both want to make money.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Nick, I appreciate your time and you coming to join us. And thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, Pagani.